Hi and welcome to Core Finance. Today we're here with Daniel Gooding, who is the CEO of Nuformix. Daniel, thank you for joining us today.
Hi, Catherine.
Can you start by telling us a little bit about your company and what it is that you do?
Of course. So my company, Nuformix. Nuformix is what I describe as a pharmaceutical development company. So we do research into small molecule-based drugs, and we look to develop them to a point of proof of concept before looking to then complete out-licensing transactions with bigger pharmaceutical companies who will take those to market. So it's a research activity, but with a kind of an out-licensing business model. What makes us slightly different is that we only work with known drugs. We like known drugs because they're safe and we can get them through to kind of inflection points a lot faster with a lot less risk. So it's a very differentiated risk model from your traditional pharma company. We also use something called cocrystal technology. And this is really important because it allows us to do things with small molecule drugs that we couldn't do previously. Plus it allows us to create patents that allow us to protect those improvements so we can create the foundation for an out-licensing position once we've demonstrated that our improved version of a drug can do something really, really novel. So is that okay?
That's very good. Yeah, you were explaining to me earlier like how your technology helps to improve the drugs but doesn't actually change them. Can you explain a little bit more about that?
Yeah, of course. The reason that it's important not to change them is because we see a drug that we like what's called its pharmacology, which is how that drug acts in the body and what it might do against an unmet need in a disease. We also like its safety. We want to choose drugs that have got a very good safety profile, well tolerated, and we do that for a reason. That's because regulators, when they're looking at the changes that we've made to materials, if the drug has changed in terms of its safety profile or its pharmacology, they'll want supporting data, additional supporting data. Our technology doesn't change any of those items, which means that we can go very quickly into patients, but we're able to actually modify the drug in a way that allows it to do things it couldn't do previously. So it allows us to deliver the drug in new ways. It allows us to solve historic problems that have perhaps prevented that drug from being successful in the past. Basically, it's a way of us giving new life to a drug in a safe, regulatory tolerated way that allows us to do some really innovative things.
Sounds good. And it's all helping people's health and improving outcomes.
Yeah, I mean, we will always look for typically areas of unmet need where there's a new learning in a disease, where perhaps we can retrofit an old molecule in that will effectively do the same thing as maybe a new molecule that's been identified, but we've got the benefit of moving forward fast and safely with using our approach.
And you've recently announced some new developments. What does that mean for you and your shareholders?
It means that the two developments are really key. I think the first development is in relation to our lead program, which is a fibrosis program. It's called NXP2. We announced some really interesting data quite recently where we were able to work in human disease lung tissue and demonstrate how effective our drug could be versus recently approved treatments. Since then, we've been looking at the various options that we have in terms of developing that drug going forwards, and we've actually settled on an inhaled option where we believe that we can treat in parallel the fibrosis component of the disease plus some of the side effects. About 80% of patients actually suffer from a really chronic cough. We believe we can address the cough side and the fibrosis side. And just to give you a feel, any person that is diagnosed with this condition, idiopathic pulmonary fibrosis, their prognosis is not good. They're usually looking at mortality within sort of 2 to 3 years. So there's a real unmet need there in terms of prolonging life. And we've really happy that we've been able to now communicate exactly what we're going to be doing with the program, taking it forwards. In terms of our second announcement, that's in relation to a new product that we've got from our platform, which is NXP4. Again, this is a very new drug that's doing some incredible things in oncology at the moment, but we've seen some limitations of that drug that we believe that we can solve, and we've also seen some other indications which we think we can take it into using our technology in a unique way. So that demonstrates that we're making progress in our lead programs, and we're also, our platform is doing exactly what we said it would do, which is churning out some new and exciting opportunities as well.
And you've also been making some inroads into the cannabinoid world. Can you tell us more about that?
Yeah, of course. So a couple of years ago, cannabinoids are a really interesting set of molecules, similar for the reasons that we've just said. They've actually, as the individual components within cannabis, of which there are 100 plus, and we're learning more about that all the time. The individual components have got some really interesting pharmacology in terms of the actions that they can have in disease. If you think about what they can do potentially alone in pain, all kinds of applications. But what really holds them back is two things. That as natural products, effectively, they can't be patented. You can't really protect them. Secondly, as plant extracts, they tend to have really, really bad properties. So they're very difficult to turn into all the sort of formats you'd think in terms of pharmaceuticals, tablets, creams, inhalers. You know, a lot of these materials are either oils or melt at close to room temperature. So we were able to apply our technology to this group of molecules quite successfully. But we recognised that perhaps based on the sort of regulatory profile in the UK for cannabinoids not being ideal, we won't get sucked down that route at the moment. But we partnered with a Canadian company in order to use those guys as the if you like, the commercialisation arm for what we were doing within that space, so that we can focus largely on our lead programs and developing other pharmaceutical products from our platform. But it's a really nice deal that we did. It covers a lot of our operating costs, creates a lot of upside, also gives us a strong royalty component at 20%. So, you know, we've got an important foothold in that space, and that's the majority of that's going to be focusing on sort of pharmaceutical applications of cannabinoids. If you follow the GW Pharma story, which is another Cambridge company that's actually on the NASDAQ, they've had a lot of approvals recently for their CBD for treating epilepsy. So we'll be looking at those kinds of applications, hopefully, in terms of the output from our research.
It does seem like there's more and more medicinal uses for this product that's been around for a long time.
Thousands of years. Yeah, absolutely. Really quite surprising amount, and we're just trying to create a lot of the missing components there. You know, intellectual property to protect these basically kind of cannabinoids 2.0. You know, new properties, but retaining their safety, retaining their pharmacology, and improving their ability to be developed. So that's what we're looking to put into that space.
And when you say plant products have like bad qualities, what does that mean? Because we were sort of think, well, if it's natural, it must be good.
It's not so much. It's more about when you're thinking about their properties in terms of you know, what it takes to develop it as a pharmaceutical product. Ideally, you know, you look at certainly in the small molecule world, a lot of the materials that are used are typically crystalline materials with high melting points that are really stable and really solid. And you know, actually, the cannabinoids are some of the worst. They've got low melting points. They've got really bad solubility. It means it's not only is it very difficult to formulate them and make products, it's actually really difficult for us to absorb them as well. So we're addressing some of the manufacturability issues. We're also addressing some of the issues in terms of being able to, you know, get better delivery of these drugs. Because once we can improve the delivery side, we can really start to drive what we can benefit from in terms of the pharmacology of these really interesting compounds.
Thank you. Can you tell us about your team? Who have you got on board?
Yeah, of course. So you know, top level. We've got Dave Topolsky, Dave and our Chief Scientific Officer, Joanne Holland, Dr. Joanne Holland. We co-founded the company. Dave is now currently at St. George Street Capital, where he's looking at a model which is taking stalled assets within big pharma and using charity funding to progress them in areas of rare disease. Before that, he was at LifeArc, where he had recently been involved in LifeArc, actually, were the originator behind Merck's Keytruda drug. If you look at this drug at the moment, it's just, you know, doing some incredible things again in cancer treatment. So one of Dave's last actions, actually, before he left the MRC, was to actually do a deal with Merck, actually with a royalty buyout company, where they pre-sold future LifeArc royalties for over $1 billion US. So he's, you know, a very well-connected guy in this space, long history of working at GlaxoSmithKline and all these kind of companies. We've also got on our board Chris Blackwell, who's ex-CEO of Vectura. He took that company and put first IPO to around $1 billion US valuation as well, working exclusively in the respiratory space with Vectura as a listed company. So he brings a huge network and a massive amount of you know, experience in terms of the corporate development side of the business.
Thank you, Daniel. So last question. What are your plans for the future?
Our plans for the future, our plans have always been around you know, building a portfolio of clinical development programs that are in very high areas of unmet need and are also equally commercially attractive. The exit, I guess, plan for us is to build that portfolio in a small and selected way. We don't want to create a kind of a behemoth that's got a massive kind of cost base and associated with a lot of risk. What we want to do is exactly what we've done so far, which is maintain a really nice low-cost operating model, take on programs that have got minimal risk in terms of what it takes to get these things through some inflection points, with a view to doing that with 2, 3, 4 programs ultimately, which will probably put us most likely in a window for a trade acquisition. So that's the future, building that sort of critical mass, if you like, in terms of the portfolio with a view towards a trade sale.
Sounds very promising. Well, thank you very much for
My
joining
pleasure.
us today. That's all we've got time for here at Core Finance. Join us next time for more business news.